Good morning, YouTube. Welcome to the Reptile Barn. I wanted to address three things for newcomers to the hobby or maybe just, first-time reptile owners, okay? So I wanted to just talk a little bit about costs and what kind of expectations to have, um, and biting from your reptile, temperament, that kind of stuff, and then a few husbandry concepts that maybe you have the wrong idea of. None of you are going to have the same questions necessarily about all of these things, so I just want to address this as kind of a general video. So first, costs. I get people who ask me, what's your cheapest animal for sale? And while I could answer that, it's a little bit of a strange question because and it's not because I'm like, oh, you must be a cheap person, you're trying to get out of paying money or something. I just think maybe there's a little bit of a confusion there because this animal, while the upfront cost of a normal ball python or a morph ball python, commonly kept, really widely bred species like a corn snake or whatever, versus a super rare Neuromastics or whatever. Yes, the upfront cost is different. However, the cost of keeping that animal is going to be the same, right? Like you get a normal ball python, it's going to eat the same food as the morph ball python. It's going to live in an enclosure exactly like the morph ball python. If it gets sick, the vet bill is going to be the exact same thing, whether it's a normal or a morph. Lights, heat, substrate, the time spent on cleaning, fresh water, etc. All of that is the same. So yes, I know we're programmed to be like, oh, how do I save money? How do I cut costs? How do I save money at any cost, right? Or at any other cost besides money. I'll put in the time, I'll put in the whatever, but I don't want to spend the money. I get that. As a business owner, I get that. I want to find workarounds. I want to save money. I want to find better sources, etc. I get that. However, I think it is deceptive to be like, I'm going to take this $100 ball python instead of this $150 ball python just because it's cheaper. That worries me a little bit because I think over the long term, this ball python might live 30 years. That $50 you just saved at the very beginning is nothing, right? You should get the one you want. That is why I'm always telling people, get the reptile you want. The one you are most excited about, the one that you are passionate about, get that one. Obviously, if you're passionate about a $10,000 mega rare thing and you just don't have that money, that's fine. But if you are getting your first pet that's a reptile, and it's going to be a leopard gecko or a corn snake or a ball python, get the one you want, within reason, because long-term financial commitment is going to be relatively exactly the same. You might as well get the animal you want, right? So that's all I'm going to say about costs. I'm not denigrating these people that are trying to get the cheapest one, but I think that there is maybe some confusion there, that you're not actually going to be getting the cheapest one. It's going to cost you over its lifetime pretty much exactly the same thing. So get the one that you think is the prettiest or the friendliest or whatever, okay? Which leads me to biting/temperament. Because I will also have people that'll be like, I don't want this one because its temperament isn't right, or pick me out one that has the best behavior. And of course, these animals can have individual personalities. Absolutely, I'm a believer in that. However, I'll take people and I'll show them my babies, and I put my babies up from oldest to youngest. I'm like, guess what? The closer you get to the youngest side here, their temperament is going to get worse in general, right? Because they're younger. When they first hatch, ball pythons are scared. They might nip, they might hiss, they might ball up, they might try and run away. Some species might musk, pee on you, evacuate their bowels. It's gross. It just depends on what kind of animal you're getting, but the babies typically are pretty scared, the most willing to bite, right? And then the older they get, assuming that, they have some interaction with you, they're going to get more docile because they become more trusting. Certainly, these captive bred species like ball pythons, 99% of the adults that are well socialized, that are handled somewhat regularly in a gentle, professional way, the adults are going to be delightful animals. Almost all of them. They're a delightful species. This is why they're so popular. It's one of the reasons. Uh, and corn snakes are the same way. Uh, they're just awesome. They like to be handled. Even I think a lot of them they like to come out and get some exercise and explore and that mental stimulation. But the little like week old hatchling, not so much. So yes, you can totally have a ball python that's more shy, a ball python that's more defensive, a ball python that explores more, a ball python that might come out during the day more than most of them do. There's going to be differences in temperament. I'm perfectly happy to walk you through, my different babies and point out some of these differences. However, the major thing people really want to know is this animal going to bite me? If this animal is 3 weeks old, it very well might bite you. It's not going to do any damage, but yes, it could bite you. So just something to think about. When you're so dialed in on, I got to get the one with the best behavior, the best temperament, I think more than half of that has to do with its age. And if there's one that you like the look of it better, but it's slightly younger, a little more defensive, if you're willing to go through that little bit of work, maybe just get that one that you like the best, right? Because in the long run, it's probably going to end up just as docile and friendly as the older one that you were looking at. So just a thought. Anyways, that's all I wanted to talk about there. And then the third thing that I wanted to just kind of clarify, there's actually a few pieces to this. Some husbandry or husbandry adjacent topics that I hear sometimes. One, reptiles do not grow to match the size of their enclosure. Complete myth. Okay? There's no basis in truth. This isn't one of those myths that has like a kernel of truth. Completely not true. Okay? It's false. It's very widespread. You're going to come across it. That doesn't mean you've been, talking with the wrong people or that you're not a good, researcher beforehand. You're going to read this a lot. I don't know why. It's just out there. It's not true. Okay? Completely, totally, 1000% not true. You don't need to look into it any further. It is debunked. Okay? 2, reptiles need a gradient of temperatures. I get so many questions about how hot does this animal need to be kept. Well, it needs a range of temperatures. They're completely ectothermic. They can't make their own body heat, and they can't really cool themselves down. They have no physiological capacity to do that. The vast majority of them, I know people are gonna be, oh, what about Burmese pythons that are, rubbing their scales and vibrating to shiver up some heat? Yes, okay, thank you. But in general, when you're keeping your reptile in an enclosure, they cannot determine their own body temperature except by going somewhere with the correct temperature. So give them a range. Look up the species. I don't want to say any numbers on here because it completely depends on the species. These reptiles are from all over the world. You shouldn't keep your corn snake the same way that you keep your ball python. You shouldn't keep your Ackie monitor the same way that you keep your salamanders. You know what I mean? So, and yes, I know those aren't a reptile, but just part of the herp world, right? They need a range. Look up the safe range for yours and then provide it. Make sure that your cage is long enough that it's easy for you to have a temperature gradient going across. This is, to me, it's not just important, it is essential. Okay? It is essential. I know these animals are tough, and if you get their temperature wrong, many of them are going to survive, but they are unhappy, they are unhealthy, and if you do it too long or too dramatically, they won't survive. They need a temperature gradient. And people are like, okay, should I use a heat lamp or an under tank heat pad? Well, many of these animals need UV, first off, which you're not going to get with a pad. However, honestly, I don't care. Just make the temperature correct, whatever you have to do. And I can't tell you exactly what you're going to need because my reptile barn here is 80 degrees. Your house is probably not 80 degrees. Some of you only keep your house, if you're in Alaska where I'm selling a lot of my reptiles and it's winter time, you don't want to waste all this money keeping your house super hot and your house is 62 degrees. That's cold. You're going to need a lot more heat mats or insulation or bulbs or whatever. Radiant heat panels. Love radiant heat panels, by the way. One of the best sources of heat out there for reptiles. But you're going to need something more than I need, right? So I don't want to just tell you this and this is the exact equipment you need and you'll be good to go. Depends on your situation. Is it in a room with a window that's open all the time? Is it in a basement? Is it in a sunroom that gets super, super hot? I've had this come up where I'm like, hey guys, that sun is beating through your sunroom into this glass tank, and you just read the thermostat and it says it's 85 degrees and you think you're fine. Well, guess what? It's 100 degrees in that tank. It's going to roast your animal. So just be aware of this. Measure things. Use a temperature gun. Okay? Not the little sticky circle things on the side of the tank. Please. There's a massive difference between air temperature and surface temperature, and reptiles, while both are important, they're very, very, very good at taking up heat from the actual surfaces that they are touching, that they are basking on. Which is why you'll see in cities, reptiles might come out in the evening once the sun's gone down, but they're still able to soak up heat from the sidewalk, from the road. It's dangerous for them, but, because of cars and stuff, but they're able to keep getting heat even though the sun's gone down. A lot of these crepuscular species, this is important for them. You'll see animals poke their head out of their burrow or their tunnel so that they can get some heat into their body while the rest of them is still hidden. So use a temp gun. It's real cheap. Make sure you know what your surface temperatures are as well as your air temperature. This is so important. Another thing that I hear a lot is, because reptiles are not warm-blooded, doesn't matter how much food they get. You can just go for a month without feeding them. No, no, please don't do that. Now, if you have garter snakes that are in brumation, yeah, you're not going to go down there, warm them up once a week and feed them. That's a disaster. Again, species specific. There's 10,000 species that we could talk about, and we're not going to, and they all have slightly different needs. So, but in general, no, that is not the case. They still need energy from their food, right? If you have a fully grown adult green anaconda, yes, you're going to be able to go a long time between meals. But if you're a first-time reptile keeper, you probably don't have a fully grown green anaconda. Okay? So for all these species that are the most frequently kept by first-time keepers, no, don't just go a month. Now, if your reptile goes off feed in the wintertime and it goes a month or two without food, okay, that's fine. I think that's fine if it's a species that does that naturally. But you should not dictate that. You can't just be like, oh, I feel like saving some money this month, so I'm not going to feed my snake, or certainly my lizard. Don't do that, right? It needs to eat. On the flip side, people are like, oh, reptiles will grow as big as they're fed. Within certain parameters, that might be true, but then you see people that are feeding their ball python every day. I have come across this. Every day they're feeding their ball python. Has no time to rest. Its system that wants to fully relax after it's digested a meal and kind of almost like their digestive system dissipates somewhat. You're not allowing it to do that. You are overstuffing them with calories that they don't need. This is also not healthy, and you're doing it just to get them big and impressive. Please don't do that. So I could go on and on and on about all these different husbandry things, but I just wanted to point out these couple of maybe inaccuracies, and I wanted to go over, the biting stuff, and I've had enough questions recently regarding some of these things that I felt like it was good for a whole video to just address these topics. So again, this was really targeting new reptile keepers. You have the enthusiasm, you've been doing your reading, you're ready to get your first animal. I just want to make sure that some of these maybe false expectations that you have for what it's going to be like when you get your reptile, I can give hopefully at least my take on what is more accurate, that's going to help your pet. It's going to help your experience dramatically. It is stressful to add a new animal. Um, it's stressful on the animal, right? Often it's stressful on us. We're so worried that we want everything to be right. So that is it. I hope this was helpful. And I am always happy to answer questions, whether it's in the comments or you want to email us or whatever. Again, this is not a judgmental video at all. I'm 10 years into this, still learn new things, even sometimes things that most of the reptile world knows. You know, I just happen to have a gap in my knowledge, and I'm thrilled when those gaps get filled in. So this is not to say like, oh, you should have done more research first before you got your no. I'm just saying there's these things that I feel like are common misconceptions. Let me try and help. That is all. Thank you guys so much for watching. Until next time, we're the Reptile Barn.